President Trump's retribution campaign reached a new and ominous level late yesterday. The first criminal indictment of a man Trump considers a political enemy. Since the Watergate scandal more than 50 years ago, presidents have refrained from interfering directly in criminal prosecutions by the Justice Department. The facts surrounding the indictment of former FBI Director James Comey show that those norms have been shattered. The indictment was brought by a former personal lawyer for President Trump, a lawyer who has never prosecuted a case. It comes after demands for Comey's prosecution from President Trump, the firing by President Trump of a U.S. attorney who refused to prosecute, citing insufficient evidence of a crime, and the refusal of career prosecutors who investigated Comey to sign the indictment, again citing insufficient evidence of a crime. We're going to analyze all the fallout this morning. Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas starts us off. Good morning, Pierre.
George, good morning. The long-running battle between the two men will soon play out in the courthouse behind me. Today, former FBI Director Comey is claiming he is the victim of a tyrant and vowing to fight the charges. But the president and DOJ leadership say the charges are justified, accusing Comey of corruption and lying to Congress. This morning, former FBI Director James Comey has been indicted on 2 felony counts. One charge of making a false statement to Congress and another for obstruction of a congressional proceeding. Just days ago, President Trump publicly demanding his attorney general take action against his political enemies. Moments after Comey's indictment, Trump posting online, "Justice in America," calling the former FBI director one of the worst human beings this country has ever been exposed to.
Mr. Comey, I have the report right in front of me.
In the indictment, Comey is accused of lying about whether he authorized the leak to the press and of lying to the Senate Judiciary Committee. But Comey last night firing back.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump. But we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either.
The former FBI director, who stands a towering 6'8", has been a larger-than-life figure in law enforcement for decades. From being not only the FBI director, but also the deputy attorney general. He was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, a prosecutor in high-profile cases who once helped convict members of the Gambino crime family. But he quickly became a target for the president after Trump blamed him for the investigation into Russian interference during the 2016 election. And Comey is also a controversial figure for Democrats, many of whom think he cost Hillary Clinton the presidency by reopening the investigation into her private email server just 11 days before the 2016 election. Now the one-time investigator has been investigated and indicted. Comey this morning offering a sharp criticism of the Justice Department, but saying he still believes in the system.
My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
The charges against Comey were brought by Lindsay Halligan, President Trump's personal lawyer, who was handpicked by the president as a new U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia earlier this week, after her predecessor, who was also appointed by Trump, was forced out after refusing to bring charges against the president's political foes. Halligan has no prosecutorial experience and has worked mostly on insurance cases. Sources tell ABC News career prosecutors presented Halligan with a memo recommending that Comey not be charged with a crime, saying there was not enough evidence. But she decided to move forward anyway and was able to convince a grand jury to indict. Democratic lawmakers outraged.
Well, it's obviously an outrage. It's a scandal. And it does feel like a major lurch into further lawlessness in the country, because it was Donald Trump's own handpicked U.S. attorney, Mr. Siebert, who was originally charged with investigating James Comey and came back with the conclusion that there was not remotely enough evidence to prosecute for any offense.
It comes as federal authorities target other perceived enemies of the president, including New York Attorney General Letitia James and Senator Adam Schiff. And now we're learning the Justice Department has targeted the group funded by billionaire Democratic donor George Soros, who the president has said should be put in jail. Sources telling ABC News top federal prosecutors from around the country received a letter this week from the Justice Department ordering them to investigate Soros' philanthropic organization, the Open Society Foundations. It listed potential charges to consider ranging from material support for terrorism, arson, wire fraud, and racketeering, but provided no evidence. a spokesman for Soros's group defending their work as peaceful and lawful, calling DOJ's move politically motivated attacks on civil society meant to silence speech the administration disagrees with.
If convicted, Comey faces up to 5 years in prison, but it's clear that Comey is ready to fight for his innocence and his reputation. George?
Kipera, thanks very much. Let's bring in our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams, our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott. Dan, this is pretty extraordinary, what we're seeing right here. The president demanded a prosecution. He got it.
Yeah. And look, what seems like the facts are pretty amazing as well. It seems this is a case about whether James Comey authorized a leak by his deputy, Andrew McCabe, about Hillary Clinton and about an investigation of the Clinton Foundation. Not a leak about Donald Trump. The Inspector General of the Department of Justice investigated this, determined that it was James Comey who was likely telling the truth about what happened and not Andrew McCabe. Comey said, I didn't authorize the leak. McCabe said he authorized the leak after the fact. McCabe actually was close to getting indicted for this by the first Trump administration because the Department of Justice Inspector General had determined that McCabe likely lied. So McCabe almost gets indicted in 2019 over this. They're not able to get an indictment, and now Comey is going to get indicted for the same conversation which the Inspector General believed Comey and not McCabe. And by the way, even if you believe McCabe's account, he's not saying that Comey knew about the leak before it happened. He's talking about it after the fact.
Except for the president's former personal attorney, every other prosecutor looked at this, said we don't have the evidence.
Right, and so she actually had to file this herself. Very unusual that the U.S. attorney doesn't have one of the line prosecutors signing off on this, working on this. She had to literally alter herself some of the language in court, which is very unusual and shows you that she's at this point kind of in this on her own in this U.S. Attorney's office.
And Rachel, the president has said the quiet part out loud again and again and again, even this morning.
Yeah, the president is already out on social media this morning. He is repeatedly attacking James Comey, calling him a dirty cop, saying there's a very big price that needs to be paid, George. And the president campaigned on this idea of retribution, that he would be going after his perceived political enemies. And he has gone through extraordinary lengths to make that a reality. Just some of the things over the last several months: stripping security clearances for some national security officials, revoking Secret Service protection for some of his harshest critics, including his former rival, Vice President Kamala Harris, and even John Bolton, forcing out prosecutors who failed to bring the charges that he wants. And then just days ago, we saw that remarkable and extraordinary statement, the president publicly calling on his own attorney general, who represents an independent and impartial Justice Department, to go after not just Comey, but also New York Attorney General Letitia James, as well as Democratic Senator Adam Schiff. The president has made this idea of retribution that was a central part of his campaign, now a central part of his presidency, and he has made it clear he wants more indictments to follow, George. And
Dan, all of these public statements from the president could actually help James Comey get this thrown out by a judge.
Correct. I mean, look, that's going to be the first question: is this case even going to make it to trial? Is a judge going to throw out this case? And that is certainly going to be part of the defense's argument, is citing each and every one of the social media posts by the president demanding this prosecution and looking at the sort of the history of how we got here.
And if that happens, we could see this whole thing go to the Supreme Court.
We could, but I think that the more likely scenario is that the Supreme Court would be happy to let the lower courts deal with this one. That's my guess.
Dan Abrams, Rachel Scott, thanks very much.